the episode. Can I see the most? When it's like, NAKAMA! I saved you, TOGA CHAN! So, yeah, a great episode. I will say that it's obviously predictable. Like, you know what's gonna happen, because, like, they're gonna kill off TOGA here, right? And so we kinda, of course we kinda know that, well, Twice has to overcome his mental trauma, right? He has to overcome his, who's the real one and so on, and, you know, be able to create more clones, and by that, and saving her, right? So it's like, we know what's gonna happen. But it's a good scene, though, and quite a brutal scene, right? He has all his mental trauma, all his screaming and so on. And then, of course, he's like, but friendship is what I care about the most. You know, I would argue definitely that Twice leveling up here is by far the most reasonable, right? Because with Toga was like, oh, I can also use Urukara's power now, right? I really want to be Urukara-chan, so I can use the powers, okay? Then I think her power, I think the Toga's quirk leveling up, how it actually leveled up, that makes sense. That she can turn into that person. She gets their powers, but she's basically, you know, mimicking them, right? Why not? And then, you know, she's losing her form quicker, right? I guess. The blood is consumed more. Okay, that's fine. So I think it makes sense how it actually works. But, of course, Toga being able to do it, last episode with her Genkai, pushing the Genkai, right? Surpassing your limits, that feels more like, well, it's like narratively, she better level up now, right? Yeah. So even though this is clearly what's going to happen with Twice, he's like has to overcome to save TOGA-chan, I still think this is the most reasonable, so to speak, leveling up, right? Because he actually wasn't leveling up. It's more like he's, how to say it? I mean, Twice is obviously more like he's actually only using very low part of his powers, and he actually had a much stronger quirk, which he just didn't utilize, right? So that's what episode I think is great too, because it's of course another twist on it, right? In Twice's case, it isn't he has to learn to use his quirk better. He hasn't had to unlock his quirk in some way, right, to figure out some creative new power up. For him, it's just that he has the mental determination to, you know, use his quirk correctly, right? So he obviously technically powered up, but he actually didn't get stronger. He used to start using his powers correctly, right? So yeah, I think it's a good, like, yeah, bro, I got your best friends. Yeah, I think that was hilarious because it really went from like this. First, that it's sad backstory, right? It's all this torment, and if you saw it for Twice, and then it turns into this like comedy bit where he's just like, "Hey, best friends, I got you! Yeah, I'm gonna save you guys, woo!" And he's just like, "I'm gonna make my own villain city, you know, I'm gonna make so much people, I can make my own friends and everything." So, yeah, I think the episode was hilarious when all the Twice were running around, and of course eventually he ended up by doing the whole, "I'm the real one," and so they're fighting. When they asked him, okay, so are you the real one? No, I'm the real one. And the guy dies like, oh, that guy was a fake one. Clearly he died, right? So you're like, yeah, here we go. Twice is back from that. Reminds me about, you know, mom, the first quirk mom, and they killed her for anti-hate for quirk and so on, right? I think his point was kind of weak, honestly, from an argument standpoint, because even though he's kind of correct with the whole that the government is kind of like pushing down the quirks, you can't just fly around freely, they have to have this license or whatever, so on, kind of go on, hero license kind of thing going on. What he's referring to, though, kind of the first mother with a quirk kid, that is like, we don't know exactly back in the past, but it's like 100, you know, like a few generations back, right? And he's kind of saying that, well, they hate our quirks. So they killed this, you know, the first quirk people, they were killing them, right? And you can compare that to something like Marvel, right? We have the mutants and so on. And it's very similar to, you know, all the anti-mutants around in Marvel. But the thing is that, of course, it's not the same thing in academia anymore. He claims it is. That's what I mean, argument is very weak, because it's like, no. It's one thing that they were hating people with quirks when they were like, you know, 1% people with quirks, right? But now it's like 80+% people with quirks, something like that. So no, obviously it's like, no, people have quirks, and people have, the society is clearly not like bullying someone because they have quirks. They might be bullying them because they have a lame quirk, right? Oh, what a lame quirk you have. But, so like people hate quirk users because they're actually the majority. So, yeah, I do feel his philosophy that makes him very weak in that sense. That he's basing a lot of his hatred towards the government and the general system, right? That they're like suppressing quirk people, and they always be suppressing them. And he's comparing like when quirk people were like 1%, or when they're massively, you know, over like they were an extreme minority compared to majority, and now it's the opposite. So it's like it's clearly not the same situation anymore. So I think his argument about with the mommy thing, it doesn't make any sense. Modernized general point, I agree with that. I think it's kind of lame that they have all these people with powers and they can't really use them. Kind of like, I don't know, when they work or whatever, you know, kind of like generally using them. So I do agree with him on that point. They could probably have a little more open uses for quirk people, right? Generally, but it's not really the same thing though. He's clearly like taking it to the most extreme level and comparing like to 100 years ago kind of situation. So yeah, and but you know, when he explains his backstory, he's like, I'm Re-destro, you know, I'm the Destro, I'm gonna carry on Destro's will. And it's like, yeah, that kind of points to that, right? He has the same mindset, I suppose, that Destro had, which is of course before in the generations, right? So he's acting like the society is exactly the same as it was when Destro was, you know, the guy. Then he's like Re-destro, right? Even he's like generations later. So it's kind of like he's, you know, it's interesting, I suppose. I feel like he's kind of like fighting a fight that's already won, basically. He's just obsessed with it, and he's fighting something that's already over. If anything, it reminds me of a lot of people in a political spectrum today, where it's like, why are you fighting about this thing? It's like, you already won, right? You already have what you want. Like, why you keep fighting? To some extent, I think that's true for him, definitely. He's already kind of guessed what he wanted, right? But he's like, no. And he acts like it's basically 100 years prior anymore. But to some extent, at least. He's obviously overplaying it. But anyway, yeah. Him and Shigaraki are going to have a fight clearly next week. And we're going to see who's going to win, right? I have to say, I don't really get Destro's powers. He's like, oh, I can turn big, and I also can like get this black thing going on and so on. His quirk is like a little bit, yeah, I don't know, honestly. I feel his quirk is a little bit, how do you say it? I'm repetitive now. It feels a little like he kind of does what the story wants him to do. His quirk clearly is limited, but and also, I don't know, like, their fight to me doesn't make much sense. He grabs Shigaraki. Why can't Shigaraki use decay immediately? Shigaraki isn't that guy you want to grab, right? Because he got his decaying powers. Like, it's not that guy you want to physically grab. So, I don't know. This fight for me seems like Shigaraki should be able to easily kill him. This guy, he's a physical guy. He just has big hands. He's mostly a guy that just has like big hands, right? You can just like touch him and dies. That's how I feel it should work. But then it's kind of like, wait, if he's using his Destro powers in this sense, does that mean he's actually immune to his powers from his turning black or so? It feels like it's some kind of underlying thing with his quirk here that I feel is not really explained, but maybe no, I don't know. It feels kind of a little random how his powers are interacting with Shigaraki and the other guys. So it's like, yeah. But I would say this thing though, I think his quirk so far looks really weak, honestly, right? It looks like a weak physical quirk. Maybe I'm completely wrong, maybe he has a lot more power scale actually, but I think in this fight now, he looks like, oh, I can turn big. It's like, I know he has a little more power to that, but if he's kind of like a mountain lady, kind of. it's like I can control my body limbs, or what's her name now again? Oh my god, Karate girl. You gave it, Honda, yeah. You can turn her, arm bigger. It's kind of like her powers, just a little more destructive. But they probably can have a lot of powers, I suppose, with that. Well, anyway, guys, that's my academia review. By the way, great, yet another great episode, right? So I was later. Oh yeah, I didn't mention Dabi. Dabi's fighting the ice guy. I still think that fight to me is Dabi too. Dabi fighting the ice guy. I guess his ice powers are better than Todoroki in the sense because he can control water basically, and he's like water in the village. But yeah, like if you fight him outside the city, he's weak, right? And the ocean is powerful, so his power is more based on the environment around him, I suppose. Still feels like Dabi should easily win, man. He's like an ice guy. Yeah, I forgot about the fight. I was like, that fight to me seems like whatever. It's like he's the guy with a really hot fire fighting an ice guy. Yeah, I don't know. It sounds very easy for him. But anyway, that's the review, guys. See you guys to course with like mentioned earlier, Yamato finally gonna have the first voice line late at night or early morning, depending on where you live. There's some good adventures today. Re-Erasure Hero and Yaya should be back today as well. So it's awesome, and we'll see you guys and have a great day. What's the button?